Well, hello again. Welcome to JTech. I'm over here with Weather International, and we're going to use this to go through a complete air systems check. We're going to test this two separate circuits and the check valves on the inside of the tank, and also quick walk around looking for any leaks or such. Now we're in a safe level area. We have our chalk blocks put on, so when we do this test, part of it does involve taking off the parking brake, which we definitely want to be safe with. Now second, I will be draining the tanks completely, and when we come back up in here, you should see obviously our air gauges over here down to 0, and there should be an audible and visual alarm. And as you see, we're going to come over here and go ahead and drain both tanks down to 0 psi. Now as you see here, this piece of paper, it does, if that focused correctly, it comes from Bendix, and it has all the steps you need to perform the complete air system check. That way you have a physical checklist you can go through and make sure you don't miss anything, and it also tells you what common causes of these problems might be. That's always good to have around, and then you can check on. Well, there it is. That's our both. You see the lights on the gauges are 0 psi. That's our audible and visual alarm. And I don't know if you heard it in time, but as you turn the vehicle on, you hear the solenoids for the brakes engaging. We can go ahead and start it up. Make sure we're in neutral, clutch is in. And what we're gonna do here is at a high idle, let the vehicle build up pressure and make sure it builds to 60 psi. That should be when the audible alarm cuts out. After that, once we get to the 60 psi, we're going to continue to build pressure and make sure the governor cuts out around 120, 125 psi. And then we'll shut off the vehicle for about 2 minutes, time that, and observe the gauges to make sure there's no loss in air pressure. Right now we're checking the charging system itself. As you see, we built up some pressure, and we should be getting close to that. The alarm cutoff, if you can see that correctly. Well, you see they both went out around 65, 70 psi, and as I said, we're going to continue to build pressure until we hear the governor cut out. And one thing we'll also test is see how long it takes at a high idle to go from the governor cutout, the alarm cutout, excuse me, 60 psi to 85 to 100 psi. It should take no more than 40 seconds. Right now we're just continuing to observe the gauges, until we reach the 120 to 125 cutout pressure for the governor. It was very faint, you might have heard it, but that was the governor cutting out of the air dryer and making sure once you reach the full system pressure, it doesn't overpressurize. I just wanted to give a quick look at the back side of the two tanks. These two tanks are also split up into one side. There's the supply side, which comes directly from the compressor. You want to make sure you empty the supply tank once in a while to get rid of any contaminants or water. And right there is the air dryer and the governor. Hello, here we are a little bit later, and we're going to do what is now called a leak down test. And basically we're just going to make sure our tanks are charged to full pressure, which I'm going to start the truck up and make sure it is. And then we're basically going to watch the gauges for about 2 minutes and notice any loss of air pressure, because we can lose about 4 psi per tank before we had to shut the vehicle down and make sure it's serviced or find any leaks and repair them. And for every trailer you do attach to that, well, like 4 psi attach a trailer, we can now lose 6 psi in 2 minutes. And if you piggyback another trailer on that, that'd be 8 psi and so on. So we're going to go ahead and get the truck started up, make sure the vehicle is charged to full pressure, and sit for 2 minutes and watch it happen. One thing I do want to know is you want to make sure your parking brake is applied all the way out. Your trailer air supply right now you don't have to worry about too much, but you make sure it's pulled out as well, because we are going to do a walk around after this and listen for any leaks. And during that we're also going to check our glad hands for any air leaks there as well. Well, we are at full pressure, it seems like, so I'm going to shut the truck off. And like I said, I'm going to pause the video for a minute, but 2 minutes. It helps with the accessories that are on. We're going to wait for 2 minutes and look for any loss of air pressure. Alright, so we've been sitting here for about 1.5 minutes. I wanted to show you. We let the air pressure settle in the system, and I've noticed maybe a pound of air loss. And this test might go a little quicker if you have somebody helping you. Alright, looks like we're well within our limits there, so we're going to do a quick get out of the vehicle, do a quick walk around on it. At the same time, we're just doing a visual check of any brake components and listening for any air loss or air leaks, which I don't think we'll have because there is no significant loss of air pressure during our leak down test. But it is always good to have a visual inspection of brake components, air system components, I apologize. And obviously I'm not hearing anything. While we're walking around, we also want to do a visual inspection of our vehicle itself, making sure tread depth is good, air pressure in the tires is what we want it to be. This truck seems to be in pretty good shape right now. Like I said, just follow the air lines, listen for any major leaks. Like I said, I'm not seeing anything. Walk over here, give a quick inspection to our glad hands, because that is obviously a vital part of our air system for our trailer brakes. Our glad hands look a little worn right now, so that'd be something we notate and fix. Well, we're back here and we're about to perform the chuff test, which my lovely friend here is willing to do. And what you do is basically you have the parking brake released, the brake pedal applied, and then you turn the key ignition on, which as I read here in a little test here from Bendix, if the air system is fully charged and the ignition power is applied, modulator solenoid is briefly energized, which when the brake service brake pedal is depressed, modulator creates a single sharp audible chuff of air pressure. And they're energized in a certain pattern, which is right steer axle, left steer axle, then right drive axle, left drive axle, and so on, any additional axles you have. So we can go ahead and get this going.
Alright, let's do that one.
Alright, so we just performed a chuff test, and once again made sure that our primary and secondary tanks were fully charged up. And one thing we're going to go ahead and do is make sure that our parking brake applies, or releases and applies smoothly and properly. I mean, all you have to do really is, you heard the air release out of the parking brakes, allowing the springs to relax. I apologize, I got that backwards. Air going to the spring brake chambers, pushing the diaphragm back so the spring brakes release. And all we are doing now is pulling the parking brake out, making sure the parking brake's applied. And then what we're going to do now is we're going to wait a minute, let the air system settle, and then we're going to push the parking brake back in, release them, and then hold a brake application for approximately 2 minutes and watch for any drop in air pressure. Once again, we're looking for nothing more than 4 psi per reservoir. Alright, I've applied and released the brake several times. Get the air pressure down to approximately 80 to 90 psi. We're going to hold that brake application for 2 minutes and watch for a drop in air pressure. There we are, we're both about 90, so I'm going to go ahead and apply and hold the brakes for 2 minutes and watch for any drop in air pressure. Well, as before, it's been about a minute and a half, and I'm holding the brake application. For the service brakes, I've not noticed any significant drop in air pressure, and seems to be working pretty well so far. And once again, just going back to my service sheet here, or checklist. One thing you also do right here is have somebody in here in the cab, or while you're in the cab holding the brake service application and watching the gauges, have somebody go around and check the stroke length and make sure it's in the allowable limits for the brake chamber type. Now we'll go ahead and engage the parking brakes again, charge up the air system again, and then we're going to move on to our next test, which is testing the dual circuit system integrity check, which is making sure the check valve between the primary and secondary tanks is functioning correctly. Alright, so we went ahead and had our tanks charged up again, and I just want to mention before we move on to the next test, at any point if this fails, any of the tests we've done so far, we come back and we correct that problem before we continue on with any of the tests, whether it just be small leaks or your compressor's gone bad and it's passing oil through the system. You don't continue on and testing when you have a problem, because then you don't know if you're getting accurate results later on. But right now, we're like I said, we're testing the dual circuit system integrity check, and we're gonna sit here and drain one tank completely to zero and make sure the gauges don't move on the other tank at all. And then we're going to charge up the truck again and charge up the air system again and perform it for the opposite tank. Once again, we're just making sure the check valve inside between the tanks isn't letting any air pressure pass between them.
Alright, so you want me to do the primary or secondary first?
Primary.
Ready?
Yep. So like I said, my assistant is draining that tank, and you want to make sure the parking brake is applied, your engine is off, and once again you're on a safe level surface in a clear area, and your wheels are chalked. Getting a little bit of glare there, sorry. It does take a minute to get these tanks drained all the way. There's our visual alarm. Alright, so we're watch that, and the gauges seem to be holding correctly on the primary one. One thing I messed up previously is during this test the parking brakes should be released because we're testing the air system. And that did leave some air, let air out. But we're also going to press the brakes and make sure the brakes do apply and release on the rear axles. And once again, need some assistance with that. You can either do it yourself with a tool or have an assistant in the shop do it. So now I'm going to stop and recharge the air system and test the other tank. Alright, so we're back here, and we went ahead and charged the truck back up, let the air system settle for a minute, and now we're going to start releasing the air from the secondary tank. And once again, watch the gauge until it goes down to 0 and make sure there's no loss of air pressure in the other tank. Like, this test is very involved, but it needs to be to thoroughly check and identify which problem areas the air system may have and what needs to be tested or corrected. Because this is not something you play around with in your air system and your brakes. Once again, our visual and audible alarm. And make sure the parking brake is released during the test. Make sure you end on a regular cycle, because that will reduce the system capacity for air and also lead to just corrosion and buildup of water inside your system when your air pressure is not working properly, such as when you have constant application in, garbage trucks, things like that. You need to keep a closer eye on your wet tank and your air desiccant cartridge.